Hi everyone, this is Madan Lloyd delivering my first podcast episode. So I've written this down. I'm reading from a bit of a script, but I'll go ahead. Well, first thing, to introduce myself, I was born in Bromley, Masons Hill in Bromley, southeast London, in 1959. So I'm a proper old geezer now, 61. I lived in Bromley till I was 14, moved to the other side of the borough, to Orpington, lived there till I was 25. Then I lived in Greenwich in southeast London, a bit closer to the centre of town, right next to the River Thames. From there, I ran off and joined the Hare Krishnas in 1990 when I was 31. I'd met them 6 years earlier and was finally convinced that they were much happier than me, so that was a much better place to go. Lived in their temple for a year, then off to India and proceeded to travel to India 15 times. It was the Hare Krishna temple in Leicester that I joined. Came back from India, lived in Croydon, then Ledbury in the Malvern Hills, then eventually moved over to Wales, where I am now. So to describe the podcast, my podcast title, as you've seen, is London Revelation. This podcast focuses on the underlying sacred geometry of London, a 400 square mile multi-layered star-patterned earth energy mandala, all centred on BBC Broadcasting House, West 1, and how utilising the places of power within that mandala, especially through the power of sound, influences the entire harmonic grid worldwide. In answer to the question, what will it do for humanity? Well, first and foremost, and this is really important, sacred geometry is a very tangible way in. It's a very tangible way to establish faith in God. So it should help to restore faith in the design of the universe, because you can see the design in geometric patterns laid out that are so vast across the landscape, so huge it's only been possible in the last 30 or 40 years to even see them by satellite mapping. That these are beyond any human capability. Why am I doing this podcast? Well, to share some astounding knowledge about London's sacred geometry ground plan that will inspire people to visit the numerous sacred sites across the Greater London area. Places like Alexander Park, Primrose Hill, Brock House right in the centre next to BBC Broadcasting House, Pollard's Hill in Norbury, so many places, churches, mounds, wells, all laid out in a multi-layered star pattern. It'll take your breath away once you start to see these things. And I believe that where you pray, go to these places, pray, meditate and sing, especially in groups, singing in groups, that will make a massive improvement to the quality of life, not only for yourself but for everybody living there. Because if you get to these places and chant the holy names of God, any names in any culture that you know, I like chanting Hare Krishna, you can chant to Jesus, Buddha, Allah, peace be with him, and whoever you accept God to be by whatever name. It's just the same God, many different names. Now, who's it for? Well, I've been asked to narrow down the audience, really open-minded people, but I'm saying open-minded young people, spiritual seekers looking for practical ways they can perceive and experience a higher reality for themselves beyond the narrow restrictions of formal religion. The biggest challenge in my podcast topic and how I overcame it is, well, the biggest challenge was getting to grips with vast amounts of numbers involved. When I began to see unmistakable evidence of design in the cosmos reflected in the UK's megalithic sites such as Stonehenge, and even more astonishingly in London's underlying 400 square miles sacred geometry ground plan, I overcame that whole challenge by expressing the relative proportions of the Moon, Earth and Sun as simple whole numbers, i.e. 3, 11 and 1200. multiply each of those by 360, the number of degrees in a circle, and you get 1080, the radius of the moon in miles, 3960, the radius of the earth in miles, and 432,000, the radius of the sun in miles. That just took my breath away when I saw that incredible evidence of design in the cosmos. What I learned from this challenge was that everything adds up to one, or in other words, when time and space are harmonised by even a brief study of sacred geometry, the interconnectedness of all things and the beauty of the underlying design of our cosmos are revealed, further indicating to me the beauty of the one who created it. My ambitions for my podcast in the next year? Well, I'd like my podcast to become popular enough to make a significant improvement in the quality of life for the young residents of Greater London who tune in. After the initial audio podcast, I'd like to demonstrate the science of sacred geometry and the power of sound applied in sacred places through an ongoing series of videos and interviews, further explaining these subject matters. Well, I hope that's grabbed your interest, and I look forward to making many more podcasts to come on these subjects that I feel really passionate about. Sacred geometry, especially in London, and the power of sound, especially getting together and singing in groups. And you really feel like these sacred places are like amplifiers that connect you with the earth and also connect you with everyone else on the earth. All right, thank you very much for listening. Hare Krishna.